All right, we are back here on the podcast. You guys heard the trailer for the new Netflix series Full Swing, made by the producers who created Drive, Survive, and Breakpoint, the tennis show. So we're going behind the scenes of the PGA Tour. Joining us today to help break it down a little bit. Somebody who helped the producers film this show and get some stuff set up for it. Dan DeMartini of the PGA Tour is back. Dan, how are you?
I'm doing well, Mike. It's been pretty cool to see this all come together. As I was telling you offline, it's strange to see so much of what your life was like the past year now being played out on Netflix in a documentary. But I've enjoyed it so far, and I'm looking forward to talking to you and everybody else about it.
Yeah, I've watched one episode. Obviously, Dan was involved in like helping them shoot this stuff, and now he's seen I think over half the show. So like, we'll give you the full fledged endorsement to go check the full thing out here. But like, I want to give you a little behind the scenes stuff, not just simply recap what you can watch on Netflix.
Yeah, no, it's definitely Netflix and Vox Media Studios had come to the PGA Tour and various entities around the golfing world, and with this idea to do very similar to that the F1, the Formula One series that Drive to Survive.
Yeah, Drive Survive.
Yeah, it's and which was a fascinating look for people that aren't really interested in that sport. It still was amazing television, and I think they've done the same thing, and they've struck gold with this one as well. Obviously, as you see when you watch the show, professional golfers are independent contractors. The tour gave the Netflix crew permission to come out to certain events and to mic up certain players, but the players themselves and the agents and managers representing those players had to agree to those terms. And once again, it's everybody is coming to the table with their own perspectives, and I think that so far I'm only through 4 episodes, but they released all 8 at once, which was pretty great that you get a full season right off the bat. This isn't like a Stranger Things scenario where you got to wait. For like a second half of the season or anything like that. But it's great TV. Whether you and I were also just talking about this, whether you know a lot about golf and the PGA Tour and the other tours around the world or not, they do a nice job of introducing the scenarios, and they follow incredible storylines from the past year as well, which everything in the golf world really, kind of came to the table and really changed quite a bit this last year. So it's a great they picked a really good year, and it's fascinating. If you want to know everything that happened in professional golf and all the headlines that have been made over the past 2 years now, all you got to do is really catch up on this series.
Yeah, for sure here. And obviously, like this is something new that like obviously these guys have obviously were very successful with Drive to Survive, made Formula One very popular here. They started spreading out their sports. I know they released one for tennis called Breakpoint. They followed the tours last year. They did a split batch. They dropped 5 episodes for the Australia. They're gonna drop another 5 in June here. When did they come to the PGA? Like, how did they come to you guys and say, hey, like, where's it in doing this? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that there was a conversation. We have a media development, business development group. There's a gentleman that kind of heads up that connection to their team. Once again, as much as this is a documentary about what's going on the PGA Tour, it's really covering all different sides of the golfing world. They've got caddies, they've got tournaments that they're showing from a variety of other tours, they've got family, spouses, significant others. So I think this idea was pitched, I'm assuming sometime between 2021 and 2022 early. It could have been as early as 2020 that the idea to do this documentary. I think that the storylines that maybe at the time that they were going to be covering, maybe something around Tiger and maybe focus more on that, really changed in 2022. What I can tell you is that they filmed a lot. They filmed everything. I was actually kind of surprised 4 episodes in how much probably was left on the cutting room floor, because there were cameras everywhere. They really did. We alerted. I work in player communications. We alerted our players that they were going to be filming in certain areas at certain tournaments. We made that very clear, and that was in our weekly communications to them. And it was up to them to decide whether they were going to be, a featured participant, like you'll see in episode 4, or not. And a lot of the times they just took sound bites from guys who were willing to do it. I'm still excited to see the sit down that they get with Rory. I'm assuming that's in like episode 6 or 7. But at the end of the day, they were, I helped them a little bit on the media release front. There were some shots of people that they were going to try to use, and anybody that was caught in the background or gave a sound bite or they showed their face, they had to get a media release form. So there was some communication on that front, and from a production standpoint, they were great. They hustled. They were all over the place. And once again, they followed arguably the most social media historic year in all of professional golf.
Yeah, for sure here. And I mean, obviously, you mentioned before they filmed some events, not all events, because obviously they have too much going on. They commit to every tour, man. Like, did they give you guys a list? Like, oh, we want to be here, here, and here. Like, you guys sign off on that?
I think so. I think that they probably, and once again, this is more so on the production side of things and not so much on the player front. But I'm pretty sure that they had a targeted list of tournaments, and you see them in the show. This is nothing. Once you get 4 episodes in, you'll get it. Like they're following marquee players, and those marquee players are playing at certain events throughout the early part of the season. Right now, the series about 4 or 5 episodes in, we're kind of at the midpoint of the summer, and you'll see there's going to be more to come, and more storylines. It's not so much about the tournaments anymore. I think what you're really seeing 4 episodes in is they're following specific players. They want to tell certain storylines. They're creating personalities around players that in episode 1 you think the whole thing's going to be, you've got these big names, Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth and all these marquee names that even the casual golf fan knows about. Well, it's actually not the case. It's so far you're getting a lot of other names that are put out there, especially with Joel Damon and Matt Fitzpatrick, who are wonderful people with great stories, but the casual golf fan probably has no idea. And I hope that the success of this show goes towards building their fan bases.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, you deal with the players more often than not here. Like when you guys went to the players and hey, like Netflix is producing this docu series, like we agreed to be on board. Like we're a lot of people guys interested in this, or some saying like thanks and no thanks. Like how was the general vibe with the players and they were told about this?
As you would assume, there were some players who were happy to do it, happy to tell their story, very able to do it to fit in with everything they have going on off the course. There was a lot of players who provided sound bites but didn't necessarily want to be mic'd up all the time. And then there were some players who had no interest in being involved. And you would assume that if you were following any major sports organization like the NFL, NBA, there were going to be some mega stars who are not comfortable, having a camera follow them. And I will say though that I think the participation is pretty good, and you're going to see it's not like you're not getting shots of Tiger in there. So you're getting sound bites from Ricky Fowler, Rory McIlroy, John Rahm, Scotty Scheffler. They follow him and Meredith in episode 2, his spouse, and they go to his hometown and talk about his historic year last year. So it's not like if you're going to tune in and you're not getting the best of the best. So I'm actually, I think every diehard golf fan who knows a lot of the big names, like you're going to be pretty pleased at what you get to see, and a lot of the behind the scenes. I'm actually watching it and being like, oh wow, they got some really cool shots, especially during some of the majors.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to that in just a minute. For me, it does cover one of the majors. I think it was a good choice here. And the tour, although like it's your department, he's more like other side. Like the tour get like input like with the Netflix guys that hey, like suggesting like let's go ahead and like like we think you should look at this maybe as an angle you guys could find interesting for your show. You guys, do they have like any creative input to you though?
I honestly don't think they needed it. To be perfectly honest, I think that they have really, really smart people behind the production of the docu-series. I think they understood where the storylines were. Golfers spend a lot of time, probably even, I don't know comparatively, but I feel like every single tournament that a player plays in, there's requests for media and interviews and Q&A sessions. And we have a wonderful media team at the tour. So it's very much every question that has come up for the past year has kind of made it very easy to follow. And as I mentioned earlier, they had cameras everywhere. So they were at every interview, they were at every soundbite, they were following certain players who agreed to do the mic'd up scenarios. And so I think the storylines kind of followed themselves. Me personally, I've been curious to see what storylines we're finding. While the show so far halfway in for me, and I'm sure we'll talk once, a few weeks from now, once we get into kind of the through the Players Championship and the rest of the majors. I feel like looking back on it, they are telling a story, obviously with competitive threats in the game of golf and various tours to the PGA Tour, like other things. They're telling kind of that underlying story, but at the same time, they're following these players and they're really trying to showcase who these players are. I think the big noise of the past year in professional golf being divided and this and that story is kind of like a little bit on the lowdown right now, and it's more so about like who are these players, what are their motivations, how competitive are they, um what are they doing to prepare to be the best. And I think that that's what you're seeing a little bit more of. And I think that any good producer and docu-series is going to try to look at the scenario and say, okay, we're following the best golfers in the world, let's get to know these players and let the storylines kind of tell themselves.
Yeah, for sure here. And I did think the Netflix had a genius move here to have the Super Bowl commercial where they gave you the QR code. You can actually go on and see the first episode a couple of days for the series drop, which I took advantage of here. And one thing I noticed the premiere I thought was a lot of fun was obviously like I watched the tennis show first, and like what they did was sort of they really went by the calendar where they started in Australia, and then they worked their way to the French before they hit the break here. It's like this is more player specific, as I mentioned earlier. Like the first episode is on it was primarily on Justin Thomas and George because over a couple of different terms. So it's not like strictly by the calendar.
Yeah, no, it's strange too because when you get to episode 2 and you kind of work your way through and you get to learn everybody that follows, the PGA Tour kind of knows how amazing a year Scotty Scheffler had. They follow Scotty's success all the way through, but then they also tell Scotty's storyline through the perspective of other players, and that they kind of ebb and flow back and forth. So you're like following a storyline all the way till its end, and then you back up a little bit and start with another player and get to see what's going on their side of things. So I think it's genius. And once again, if you're coming in as just a casual golf fan, maybe you like to go play, but you don't really watch. This is definitely a series for you to kind of get to know who some of these other players and names are and kind of get a vibe for what their lives are like and what kind of people they are.
Yeah, that's for sure. Here, I did think the choice centered on the frenemies storyline with Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth was great, especially like we get to the PGA where they set this up for the audience, like, oh, like Jordan Spieth needs this needs this win here to complete the career Grand Slam, and then we end up seeing Justin Thomas come out of nowhere and win the thing in the big comeback on Sunday. That was a lot of fun.
That's really cool. And these are the kinds of things that if it's hard. I get that it's hard to watch Thursday all the way through Sunday. It's a lot of hours to commit to it, and there are people out there that are diehards that love watching it. But when you do truly understand, and you get to see the kind of these snippets that the show showed of just like Justin Thomas feeling basically completely out of it, and then coming roaring all the way back, like that is such a great opening episode, and it gets you kind of like, oh my God, like this is all it could take is one good round. And they do it again in episode 4 with Joel at the US Open as well. And when he's trying to qualify and what it takes to qualify for the US Open, he comes out and he has a kind of bad first 18 holes and he needs to shoot 5 under to qualify because he's not in the top 60 players. So he comes back out in the afternoon and shoots 5 under and just goes crazy and gets in and then almost wins the tournament. He finishes T10. So it's a wonderful storylines, and this is why golf is such a great sport. And I know it's hard for a lot of people who didn't grow up getting to play it or around it once again, but we're in kind of a whole new era. And the guys that are playing on the PGA Tour right now are very much aware of how golf is perceived in the greater sports landscape. And like that's why you're getting so much out of this docu-series, because these guys are relevant in the whole sporting world. You just got to give them the chance to get to know them. They might not be headline news on Sports Center or whatever it is, but man, if you dive in a little bit and you're looking for some drama and excitement and passion and incredible athleticism, and you'll see it, the training that goes behind it and the analytics and all that stuff, like you can really geek out within what's going on the PGA Tour right now.
Yeah, I did also love all the behind the scenes photos you got here, especially like we see Justin Thomas like his workout routine between rounds. We see him talking to his dad about some of his like strategy for the tour. We see Jordan Speed memorably going to CVS and like trying to get his allergy meds and getting stuck on the self checkout for like 10 minutes, like stuff like that's fun.
It is, and it goes to show you that this is we always come back, golfers are independent contractors, and they choose to play and accept PGA Tour membership and all that and that jazz, but they're just normal people too, because remember, think about it, how many people out there would you say that personally, Mike, would know who Jordan Spieth is just by walking by him in the grocery store? There's
Not many.
unless yeah, not that many, right? And yet he is a major champion and a top tier PJ Tour earner, and one of the best golfers arguably to ever play. And yet they're at the end of the day, that's what's so strange. Like when you walk by an NFL player at the grocery store, you can buy like, oh man, this guy's huge. He's probably a professional football player or a professional athlete. You walk by a professional golfer, and you know, I, I think I'm like 2 inches taller and probably 40 pounds heavier than Justin Thomas, yet he hits the ball 40 yards past mine. So it just goes to show you that talent comes in all shapes and sizes. And this show is going to continue to grow the personalities of these players, and you're gonna recognize them even more, even if you're just a casual sports fan.
Absolutely here. And obviously they dropped all 8 episodes of the series on February 15th. I'm gonna finish watching it out here. I'm excited to see like these player centric episodes you mentioned here. That's gonna be fun to see. Like I think that's the correct way to do it. I think the way the golf season flows is kind of hard to go on the calendar because guys might just weave in and out. It's sort of like if you have to worry about these personalities, like show their storyline, then they can still pop up in other episodes. So if you want to have like the Scotty Scheffler dedicated episode, you can do it.
Sure, and it's funny. I think I've dove in a bit more on storytelling within TV shows and whatnot, just because of what they're doing with, um, you know, various other shows out there, especially on HBO. And how do you, like with Last of Us, right? So there's the episodes that keep the main storyline going, and then there's like the subplots. And I think the docu-series is doing a good job of the same thing. There's that main storyline, and then there's these little diverted episodes. So it all comes back. I feel like they do a nice job of, it feels like each episode could have been a little bit longer. I feel like as soon as I'm like really bought in, it's like, oh man, there's 42 minutes, it's gone. Or whatever it is, 44 minutes. And it's like you kind of want more. So I'm already sitting here like, oh my God, I've absorbed all this stuff. It's been almost, it's been 4 episodes already. Now it's like I got to slow down because I don't want the 8 episodes to be over that fast.
Yeah, that's for sure here. And off the top of your head, do you know if they are working on a second season right now? Like, are they,
That's the assumption. That there's a lot more storylines to tell. There's a lot more changes that they want to be able to cover. I don't know where season one ends. Obviously, when we get to episode 8, the next time I come back on and we check in, we can kind of recap what we thought of the whole series. But I would have to assume that the overwhelming success, the promotion of it, PJ Tour sponsors, obviously getting behind everything, even with the Super Bowl ads, that if this continues to be the success that it is, that you're going to get multiple seasons of this.
yes, I would assume like you know pretty quickly it's gonna be successful. And like, I mean, the golf season barely started, so like they have not missed much. They haven't started filming yet.
No, and once again, I would assume that the promotion of this series is going to coincide with people really starting to kick it up. Obviously, we had WM Phoenix Open last week, which always kind of feels for the non-golf diehards as like the first official real event of the golf season. Obviously we've been playing all the way through last fall, and we were out in Hawaii and Century and the Pebble Beach and all that stuff that happens in January. There's the whole West Coast swing because the weather's so much better. Although it sounds like in the Northeast, it might be pretty similar.
Yeah, 62 today on day of recording.
Yeah, pretty wild. It was colder. I don't know if anybody saw the headlines of Tiger teeing off yesterday morning before his pro-am, and it was like 42 degrees on the range
Yeah.
at Riviera. So It seems like it might have been better to be playing in the Northeast right now, but it definitely feels like we are ramping up, and this show will really coincide nicely with what's really going on, because things have, from a headline standpoint, have cooled off over the past few months. But obviously, it's going to really ramp up again as we continue to get into the Players Championship next month, actually just in a couple weeks, and then moving into kind of the major season leading right through the FedEx Cup playoffs.
Absolutely, Dan. Thanks for all the time. Really appreciate it. People want to follow you on social media. How can I do that?
Sure, DMart207 on Twitter, and happy to come back on and talk uh, more about this, and more about. We'll do our normal who's hot, who's not, leading into the major championships. Talk to you
Sounds
soon.